That is my little musical intro. Hello, it's Nick. I'm here again, creator of HEYS Reviews, back with another live stream. I am just having a look, checking the levels are good, all the lights are on, all the correct buttons are in place to get the show on the road. So today I'm going to do a similar thing as I did last Saturday. I did my first live stream, and that was bringing you some news stories and doing a little bit of an analysis and reading through them. At the end of that video, I pointed you in the direction of some solutions as well, particularly things that we can use to straighten out our thinking, to unpick our worldview of contradictions, right? I've heard it said that there is no lie in nature. There are no contradictions in actual reality. Only human minds come up with contradictions, and this leads us down all sorts of paths of pain and suffering and struggle and strife. So being able to have a non-contradictory understanding of the world and what's going on in it, your place in it, is very important. So last week there was a focus on some of the insane nonsense that is given to us, projected at us via our technology. And today we're going to be touching on some news stories which follow off the back of last live stream's discussion. And we're going to be just going through some articles that I've been gathering throughout the week and having a little dive into what's going on out there. Our understanding of reality is rapidly being broken down and dissolved and reshaped and reconstituted, and the people who are doing this don't have our best intentions at heart or in mind. They don't care about us. Michael Jackson did a whole song about this. All I want to say is that they don't really care about us. That was released not too long before he left his mortal coil, and it's true, he's right on the mark. And so I want to shine a spotlight on these crazy things that are going on, try and bring some sanity, try and bring some clear thinking, clear-headedness, and maybe a bit of humor, because Lord knows we all need it. So thank you for being here, whether you're here live or whether you're here after the fact. Let's get right into it and have a look. Okay, so this is the first story that I've queued up for us to look at today. This is from the 15th of November, which was, 3 days ago? Very recent. It's an article, it's a website I've not been to before. It's CapX. You can see at the top there the topics that they are interested in. But this article is about Scotland's Read Woke scheme will have Shakespeare turning in his grave. So what is the Read Woke scheme, and why is this being rolled out in Scotland? Well, let's read on, find out a little bit more. So the background is that this month marks the 400th anniversary of the first printed edition of Shakespeare's plays. Now, I'm here in England. I grew up in secondary school and college and university reading Shakespeare. I actually studied English literature at university, and so Shakespeare was something I'm quite familiar with, and his work is considered to be a cornerstone of British history and British culture. It's kind of like reading another language, even for us native Brits. But as they say here, his work does encapsulate the human condition, so it's quite precious to us. It's a piece of our history that we want to preserve and look after and project and send into the future. But what's going on that's going to make Shakespeare turn in his grave? So this Read Woke program that we're learning about here, as the name makes clear, the focus is neither beautiful writing nor diverse viewpoints, but political messaging. Read Woke is being piloted by South Ayrshire Council with financial help from a Scottish government grant. Books for primary school children claim racism was invented by white people, while those for secondary age pupils assert that it is impossible to be racist against white people. So white people invented racism, and it only goes in one direction. It's something we do to all non-white people, and it can't be something that non-white people do to white people. That's what's being taught in Scotland now, according to the schools that are rolling out this Read Woke program. Can you see any problem with that? Like I said in my last live stream, the way to check whether or not this is problematic is to put another color in there. So if you were aware of children being taught that racism was invented by black people and it's impossible to be racist against black people, how would you feel about that? Would that be okay? Would you accept it? Would you allow that to go through, to go into the minds of the young people, the impressionable people, the people who are the future of your nation? I don't know. I feel uncomfortable with it, whether it's white people or black people in this sentence. I think it's all stupid. The issues its chosen authors raise about a dominant culture of white supremacy and the trap of labeling ourselves in ways that center whiteness are racially divisive and steeped in a highly contested idea of critical race theory. Exactly on point. Yes, highly divisive and highly contested. The idea that only one group of people can be racist is patently stupid, historically illiterate stance to take. All nationalities, all colors, all creeds, all religions can be racist. And, there's even like a whole line of thinking which is questioning whether or not racism actually exists. So we got to get into the definition. What is the definition of racism? And I think the problem is we're constantly told and bombarded that racism is a huge problem and you should be guilty and you need to be reprogrammed and you need to have your unconscious bias squeezed out of you by corporate trainings and PowerPoints and these kind of things. And it's just perpetuating and pushing a narrative that I don't see day to day and I don't witness it in my life. And yet we're told that this is the case. So it raises that other issue of things that we're told versus things that we actually experience on a day-to-day basis when we're living our lives and interacting with friends, families, colleagues, and etc. So let's go on. Read Woke is not the first attempt to using books to coerce children into accepting a particular political agenda. A school in Scotland removed To Kill a Mockingbird from reading lists following a move to decolonize the curriculum. Publishers have ordered politically correct rewrites of books by much-loved authors such as Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton. Newer books, even those for the very youngest children, are written with messages about race, gender, and sexuality front and center. I'm going to come on to this Roald Dahl and Enid Blyton issue a little later. But do you really think young children need to be sort of indoctrinated into being hyper aware of race and gender and sexuality? No, of course they don't. If you don't bring it up and mention it, they will overlook those things and not see themselves as divided and separate. What this race, gender, and sexuality teaching does to children, it teaches them that there are groups and these groups are different, and it elevates one group above another group, which is the very definition of the things that they claim to be fighting against and getting rid of. So it's absolutely just silly. As it says here, this is indoctrination, not education. Read Woke is about promoting a way of thinking steeped in crass understandings of identity, victimhood, and social justice, not introducing children to beautiful language, aspirational characters, and morally complex situations. And excuse me a minute, I've got a cough. So, scheme funded by the Scottish Government is rightly criticised for using biased children's books in a crude attempt at politically indoctrinating a captive audience of school pupils. And the writer here says, this should be the end of my article, but it's not. It goes on. And he goes on to talk about removing old books from the curriculum and rewriting family favourites is apparently a perfectly acceptable and politically neutral exercise. It is only when this practice is questioned that cultural war salvos are fired. With critics now embroiled in defending themselves against charges of waging a culture war, South Ayrshire Council is planning to expand Read Woke to more schools. So we'll see later on in some of the other articles that what happens is the people who speak out and the people who say, actually, we don't want this to happen. We are uncomfortable with our children being taught in this way, being indoctrinated in this way. Those people tend to get a certain label attached to them, and they get they get sort of slandered, and they typically tend to be called far right, domestic terrorist extremists because you don't want these kind of things being taught to very young children. So make your mind up. Do you agree with that or not? So the next tab I have open, which we could switch to here, this is the Read Woke homepage with a founder, a media specialist. I don't know what that means. What is a media specialist? Well, I don't know, but it exists. She's a media specialist. She started the Read Woke Challenge in 2017, and she concluded that a woke book must challenge a social norm, give voice to the voiceless, provide information about a group that has been disenfranchised, seek to challenge the status quo, have a protagonist from an underrepresented or oppressed group. Now, at first glance, those things might sound good, might seem like a good idea to do that. But is it really that? Is it good to challenge a social norm? And is it really good to seek to upset the status quo? In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. Social norms often exist for a reason. It gives you a touch point. It gives you a way to act, a way to behave that is understood by most of the people around you in your community and in the way you live. And breaking those social norms and challenging those things leads to instability. It can lead to people not understanding each other. You know, think about the generational understanding. The gap between generations just widens and widens at an ever accelerating pace, because we're constantly bombarded and our young people are encouraged to challenge a social norm. You know, and if you are raised in a country or a community where marriage is highly valued and monogamous relationships are highly valued, as a child, you're going to look at that and say, oh, that's a social norm. I'm going to challenge it. And that leads to all sorts of issues and problems. Now, I'm not saying there's any one right way for adults to conduct their romantic lives. What I am saying is just blindly challenging any social norm that exists and any status quo that exists can have really profound, unpredicted, unforeseen consequences, which we'll actually get to a little later in this show. I've got a story about what those consequences are. So yeah, this media specialist is encouraging children, young children everywhere, to challenge the social norm and the status quo. The other thing about is underrepresented or oppressed groups or giving voice to the voiceless. This is this starts in a good place. It can start with a kind of with good intentions, with oh well, we need to speak up for those who are disenfranchised and don't have a voice, which sounds good. It's kind of an underdog type situation. But there's a lot of groups of people out there who don't have a voice, who shouldn't have a voice. These could be really just psychopaths or sociopaths, or people who are very interested in criminal activities, people who are interested in deviant sexual activities. Like a lot of minorities and groups and fringe groups and voiceless people and disenfranchised, underrepresented, or oppressed groups are that way because they don't have a place in a sort of civilized society that is looking to build a country or a community based on principles and morals and hard work and creating a better world for future generations, right? You can't include everybody because that means you have to include everybody, and not everybody is really worthy of a place at the table. Unfortunately, there's a lot of nasty, horrible, evil people out there, and it's not always their fault, you know? But just blindly saying we have to represent everyone and we have to bring everyone in on this thing, whatever it is, it's silly. It's very low resolution and a bit childish. But it sounds good, so people get on board with it. Anyway, going back to the topic of censorship and books and these kind of things. So this is an article from The Guardian. Roald Dahl books rewritten to remove language deemed offensive. Augustus Gloop now enormous instead of fat. Oh, gosh, you can't call people fat. The word fat has been cut from every new edition of relevant books, while the word ugly has also been culled, the Daily Telegraph reported. It's kind of strange to me that the Guardian is quoting the Daily Telegraph. Aren't they supposed to be competing, or they're trying to get their reporting and news in front of the same audience? But anyway, hundreds of changes were made to the original text and some passages not written by Dahl have been added. All right, so they're changing the text as Roald Dahl wrote it, and they're just adding bits in as well. So this is very Orwellian. It's very 1984 memory hole, Ministry of Truth type stuff. And it's always a tiptoe. It's always a gradual. It's just a few changes. It's not going to change the core essence and the message of the book. Let's just change a few words here and a few words there to protect the precious feelings of everybody. So it's really Orwellian. It's very sinister, okay? So in The Witches, a paragraph explaining that witches are bald beneath their wigs ends with the new line, "There are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there is certainly nothing wrong with that." Well, I guess it's a victory that they're still using the word women. So we'll take a victory when we can get one. But it's this like constant tiptoeing around, obsessed with how you might be causing offense when, offense is in the ear of the beholder, let's say. It's up to you whether or not you're offended. You get to control that. It's an internal thing. It's your reaction to whatever, a sound, a word, a drawing, a picture, a film. If you're offended by that thing, you do not have a right to erase that thing from existence. You can remove yourself from the situation. You don't have to look at that thing or listen to that person, or you can do that kind of, just block the sensory inputs out. But that's on you, and you've got to do that. You don't get to rewrite what everyone else around you does. They don't have to respect and buy into your precious sense of what is and is not offensive. Sorry, the world doesn't work like that. It doesn't revolve around you. But that's what's leading to this really kind of just silly sounding qualifications being added to everything. So another example here. There's a centipede in James and the Giant Peach, and he used to sing, "Aunt Spiker was thin as a wire and dry as a bone, only drier." And it's funny. It's one of those lines that makes it into children's books from time to time, which the parent can have a chuckle at, which the child has no idea why the parent's laughing at it, but it works on two levels, right? And apologies if you can hear the morning traffic getting excited in the background there. So this is great, because this is a book that a parent might read to a child at bedtime, and they can both enjoy it. And that's true family entertainment. That is true writing. That's really impressive that Roald Dahl could do that. But that can't stand anymore, and that's been changed to "Aunt Spiker was much of the same and deserves half of the blame." Wow, that's really going to help the parents and children who are reading this enjoy it together, isn't it? So we also found out that references to female characters have disappeared. Miss Trunchbull in Matilda was once a most formidable female, and she's now a most formidable woman. So again, at least we still got the word woman in there. Gender-neutral terms have been added in places where Charlie and the Chocolate Factory's Oompa Loompas were small men. They're now small people. And the Cloud Men in James and the Giant Peach have become cloud people. Puffin and the Roald Dahl Story Company made the changes in conjunction with Inclusive Minds, who are described as a collective for people who are passionate about inclusion and accessibility in children's literature. Again, they're inclusive. They want to include everybody except the people who think all this stuff is stupid nonsense. Those people are not included in the efforts to be inclusive. You see how this works? So their inclusive efforts are exclusive of the people who don't agree with this rewriting and bastardization of classics, So that's how inclusivity works. And anytime you see the word inclusivity and we're trying to be inclusive and we have to be inclusive, what they're actually saying is the exact opposite. A co-founder of Inclusive Minds said that they aim to ensure authentic representation by working closely with the book world and with those who have lived experience of any facet of diversity. Yes, well, authentic representation. The authentic representation is that there's men and there's women, and a man plus a woman equals a child, and that's how life goes on for the human race. There's nothing we can do about that. They're trying to push us towards test tube babies and all these other gross ways of reproduction, and they're trying to remove that from humans' control. They're trying to there's an industry out there that's trying to take over that, and you know how industry works. They usually build a monopoly, and they usually make people dependent on the service or the product that they're trying to get out there. This is the way it always works. So authentic representation, except if you are the kind of person who believes in monogamous marriage and strong families and having children the natural way, you're not allowed to be represented. But she does, I suppose she does qualify that with lived experience of any facet of diversity. Well, but that includes everybody, right? Silly, nonsense, hard to understand, and it's designed to be that way. Lastly, spokesperson says, our guiding principle throughout has been to maintain the storylines, characters, and the irreverent and sharp-edged spirit of the original text. So completely contradictory. There's nothing about what they're doing which is going to preserve irreverence and sharp-edged spirit. It is definitely taking away the edges. It's making it into a gooey, grey, bland, boring, crap experience. And that is the true intention of all this stuff. At the bottom, it says, please support The Guardian for £2 a month. I say, no, don't support The Guardian for £2 a month. Go to off-guardian.co.uk and support those guys instead. They're doing much better work. What's next? Next, we have news.com.au. So this is a similar story, but it's about Enid Blyton's famous 5 books. There's an ongoing process to remove offensive words. The publisher of a classic children's series has confirmed it will continue to rewrite the books to remove any offensive terms. Oh, we're so lucky that we're being protected and looked after by people who love us so much, right? So it's been revealed that phrases such as shut up and innocent uses of words, including queer, gay, and brown, had been censored from the books. So the author, she died in 1968. And she's the latest to fall victim to the woke edits as publishers quietly rewrite older works. So there's some examples of what's being removed here. And this is quite a long article, so it's worth reading if you get a chance. But I'll just highlight a few examples. A description of a brown-faced fisher boy has been changed to a suntanned fisher boy. So the color brown is offensive, and there is nobody who is brown or could be described as brown on the face of the planet anymore. Respect for elders seems to have gone out of fashion too. Now that's interesting, and that's something that I'm very looking forward to talking more about on these broadcasts. The Daily Mail wrote, when Julian apologized to Uncle Quentin in the 1942 version, he said, "I'm sorry, sir." Now he is sorry, but he does not include the apparently too subservient sir. Imagine young people showing respect to their elders by calling them sir and madame and these kind of things. That is outrageous. No, of course that has to be gotten rid of, because what we want nowadays is a bunch of young people who are totally self-obsessed, think they're the center of the universe, think they are the arbiters of truth and information because they've got smartphones and they've got Google to tell them what to think and what to do, and they've got influencers and TikTok and YouTube and all this stuff. And, get rid of the traditions, get rid of the status quo, get rid of the established norms, turn these young people against their elders, make sure that they question everything, which is actually a good thing to do, question everything. But to never look up to or value the wisdom and the experience and the lessons learned from the people older than them. And this is what I mean about the gap between the generations being expanded and artificially widened, so that even an age difference of 10 years can lead to two people being totally unable to understand each other because they don't have the common touch points. They don't have the same sort of values and ethics and morals and outlook on life. And so it makes communication very difficult. And it just means that instead of people relying on their family members, let's say their elder siblings or their parents or their uncles and aunties and cousins and grandparents for advice and knowledge and information and wisdom, instead of that, they rely on social media and TikTok and YouTube and all the morons that are on there like me posting stuff all the time. But Let's go on. Have we got any more stuff to look at here? With Enid Blyton, the book's period setting is part of their charm and is enjoyed by readers of all ages. Yes, exactly. It's supposed to be, it was written at a specific time in history, and they're trying to erase that time. And the reason they're trying to erase that time is because they're trying to weaponize things. They're trying to find ways to punish you. And if you've ever seen the film Demolition Man, it's an old film with Sly Stallone, and he awakes in the future. He's been frozen. He gets woken up in the future because they need a super soldier to take out a super bad guy. And he starts swearing, and every time he swears, there's a machine on the wall which records him and then issues him a fine. And that's basically where we're heading. Is this kind of total policing of language, total control of language, so that you are going to be unable to say anything that might be deemed offensive or upsetting by anybody. And at the same time, they're making young people more sensitive and soft and self-righteous and solipsist, and implanting this idea that you get to demand how everyone else speaks and acts around you. So again, inclusive minds is mentioned here. So these guys seem to be at the root of this stupidity. All right. What we got next is James Bond. James Bond books are also being edited to remove racist references. Just goes on and on. So this talks about the sensitivity readers. So the sensitivity readers are the people who are pulled in and they're like, is anything in here offensive? And they say, yeah, the word fat's offensive. I mean, if you're fat, you're fat. And it's okay to be fat. It's unhealthy to be fat. It is going to significantly lower the quality of your life, your energy levels, your ability to think clearly, your willingness to do things, to engage in the world. It's going to affect your motivation. It's going to have a whole host of life impacts that are negative for you. But it's fine if you choose that way and to be that way, and you're not willing to put the work in and the learning and take the effort to get yourself out of that situation. It's fine. But you're fat. If you're fat, you're fat. And we should be able to say you're fat. But you can't do that anymore. You can't call a fat person fat. You have to call them, I don't know, maybe you have to call them just beautiful and stunning and gorgeous and brave. I think that seems to be the way it's going. James Bond novels have been rewritten to remove a number of racial references. So I wonder, let's see if they're going after the color brown. Sensitivity readers are the culprits this time. The Telegraph understands that a disclaimer accompanying the reissued texts will read, "This book was written at a time when terms and attitudes which might be considered offensive by modern readers were commonplace." Might be. This happens all the time in all this nonsense stuff that's going on. It's always might and could and may. People don't seem to understand that might, could, and may, that those words could represent a 1% chance of something happening or a 0.005% chance of something happening. But they read a headline, going out in the sunshine may lead to a heart attack. And they're kind of, oh my God, I better stay indoors and never go out in the sunshine. Even though that might be a 0.0001% chance that may happen, right? So you got to look out for these words. They're called modal verbs: might, should, could, would, may. And they're always used to give an impression that something's way more likely than it actually is. So what we're concerned about is that tiny, tiny fraction, that tiny percentage of people who are so emotionally weak that they get triggered by words on a page written, 70, 80 years ago. The changes to Fleming's books result in some depictions of black people being reworked or removed. Now, this is brilliant. I really enjoyed reading this bit earlier. Dated references to other ethnicities remain, such as Bond's racial terms for East Asian people and the spy's disparaging views of Oddjob, Goldfinger's Korean henchman. So, East Asian people and Korean people, fair game. Black people, nope, we can't refer to them. And brown people, apparently. But Koreans, fine. East Asian people, fine. Go after them, say whatever you want, not a problem. References to the sweet tang of rape, blithering women failing to do a man's work, and homosexuality being a stubborn disability also remain. that there's a stronger case for removing those things, but at the same time, it was written at a certain time when talking about these things was, you have the right to say it and put it down in a book if you want to. If these are your opinions, you have the right to hold them and communicate them to other people, right? It's not claiming that everyone should go out and rape. It's not claiming that everybody, I shouldn't be saying that so often on YouTube, it's going to get flagged. It's not claiming that everyone should go out and do that. Surprise sex. I shouldn't say sex either, should I? Okay, rewind a bit. It's not claiming that everyone should go out and do that activity that is on the screen here. It's not encouraging that. It's not encouraging this view. Just because it's there on a piece of paper doesn't mean people are going to read it and go, oh, I'm going to go and do that now. And it must be good because Ian Fleming wrote it in a book. I'm gonna go and do it. So it's just that this policing, this obsession, this mollycoddling, like softifying, gooeying, making everybody like scared of words. It is an extreme attack upon the mental and emotional resilience of our population. In the sensitivity reader approved version of Live and Let Die, Bond's assessment that would-be African criminals in the gold and diamond trades are pretty law-abiding chaps, I should have thought, except when they've drunk too much, becomes pretty law-abiding chaps, I should have thought. So we can't make the claim that would-be African criminals might be more likely to commit crimes when they're drunk. We can't make that claim, even though no matter your ethnicity or race, that is true. If you're drunk, you're more likely to commit a crime and be involved in a crime. That's just true for anybody. Black people, white people, brown people, purple people, green people, short people, fat people. Sorry, not fat. Beautiful, wonderful, courageous, brave people. The original passage read, so this is he visits a strip club. And the original passage read, Bond could hear the audience panting and grunting like pigs at the trough. He felt his own hands gripping the tablecloth. His mouth was dry. That is good writing, the sensations, it doesn't describe, in this little excerpt, doesn't describe anything graphic, but you get that energy, you get the sense of it. And that's been changed to Bond could sense the electric tension in the room. I mean, they could have at least gotten someone who could write to do these changes and these edits. It's like they've got people who can't write. They've got grads, I don't know, like university grads or something. That is bland. It says nothing, and it doesn't go anywhere near capturing what the original description communicated to us. All right, so the N word, the N dash 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 dash. Fleming used this to refer to black people when he was writing during the 50s and 60s. It has been almost entirely expunged from the revised text. In most cases, this is replaced by black person or black man. But racial descriptors are entirely dropped in some instances. So this word was used way more comfortably than it is today, and they've gotten rid of it and rejigged that. But they're actually, the interesting part here is that they're removing racial descriptors altogether. So in one example, some criminals escaping from Bond in Dr. No become simply gangsters. In the same novel, the race of a doctor and an immigration officer now go unmentioned, as does that of a henchman. The ethnicity of a barman in Thunderball is similarly omitted in new editions, and a butler's race now also goes unmentioned. So they were erasing different races, and isn't that racist? Pretending they don't exist, just getting rid of them. Oh, there were none of these people around at that time and doing these things and included in these stories. Isn't that whitewashing at its most obvious and overt form? It seems like it is to me. And again, it's like, okay, we encourage people to read the books for themselves when the new paperbacks are published in April. And then the last sentence, which I thought was a really odd one. In 1954, Live and Let Die was banned in the Republic of Ireland. So a weird way to end an article. And the only reason I could think of as to why they would end it this way is because they're just like, it's fine. It's been banned before, so it's fine to ban it again. That, it's just a little reminder. And by the way, this is all fine. Don't worry about it, because it's been happening before and it happened again. So that is Ian Fleming. That is Roald Dahl, and that is Enid Blyton, all being rewritten, all under attack. The one thing I wanted to highlight as well, which is, I'll just put in a little plug for a book, is this book here, which is The Irregulars, Roald Dahl and the British Spy Ring in Wartime Washington by Jeanette Conant. This book is about Roald Dahl, and it is about Ian Fleming, and it is about their role as propagandists in wartime Washington. Did you know that they were part of the British establishment's effort to propagandize Americans? So the funny thing to this is that Roald Dahl and Ian Fleming, who are writing children's books and spy fiction, spy novels, they themselves were propagandists. And now the current day propagandists are coming in and saying, "Oh, we got to get rid of that old stuff. That old propaganda is not fit for purpose anymore. We got to update that with our idea of what propaganda should be and is in this modern day." So it's just layers and layers on layers and layers. It's very funny, but it's a good book to read. And I haven't read it, but I do know people who have, and I've spoken to them about it, and they highly recommend it. So get it while you can. On the topic of books, stock up on these early editions of James Bond, Roald Dahl, and Enid Blyton books as well. They're going to be really valuable in the future. Grab them if you see them, if you can order them, if you find them in secondhand bookshops. Get those old versions, because all the newer ones are going to be really shit. What's next? So we're moving on from books, and we're moving on from censorship and onto a crazy topic, which still, highlights some of the insanity and the crazy things that is going on in our schools. So, a lesson in common sense. School tells parents it will not be providing litter trays for pupils who identify as cats, and warns this kind of behavior is not acceptable. And I like it. The mail online is like, finally, a lesson in common sense. Yay, finally. Somebody is pointing out the insanity of allowing children to identify as animals. What's going on in this story then? So a school sent a letter home to parents to warn it is refusing to provide litter trays for any people who might want to identify as a cat. So it's to deny claims that cat litter trays are set to be provided for furries. And furries are pupils identifying as pets. Baffled parents received a letter to say there would be no provision for these kind of children. There's a copy of the letter. So it says a lot about the times we live in when Claire Hughes, the deputy head teacher of the school which Anthony Hopkins went to, right? And look, let's look. So the head teacher has all these letters. Look at all those letters she's got after her name. Goodness me. She's a real alphabet person. They feel compelled to address this issue, right? Of students using cat litter trays as toilets. This is a sign of the times. Just think really long and hard and carefully about that, what it means, and the world you're living in. Is that the world you want to be living in? Is that the world you thought you were living in? There's a lot of questions. Let's carry on. The government investigated Rye College in East Sussex, where a 13-year-old girl was branded despicable by her teacher for rejecting her fellow pupils' request to be identified as a cat. So we're at a time in history now where if somebody comes to you and says, "I'm a cat," and you say, "Shut up, no you're not, you're a human," you're despicable, according to some people out there. The school said in June it allows students to identify as animals, saying that no children enrolled there identify as a cat or any other animal. Oh, it denied it allows that. So good. That's obviously sensible and straightforward. And again, like, whatever you want to do in the privacy of your own home with other consenting adults is irrelevant and none of my business and none of anyone's business, and nobody cares. Just get on with it, right? Shut up about it and get on with it. Don't make it the thing that you have to parade around in front of other people and make everyone accept and be aware of. It's like, it's your private stuff that nobody cares about, right? So keep it that way. But to be spreading it to children, it's weird. So this is a spokesman of Aquinas Church of England Trust, which runs Rye College. We understand that draft guidance on gender identity in schools is expected to be issued by the government soon, and we would, of course, welcome what we hope will be clear and helpful guidance. Well, good luck getting clear and helpful guidance on this issue. There's the man, Anthony Hopkins, who played the most notorious and famous cannibal ever to come out of Hollywood. So, dude's probably got some weird kinks and fetishes of his own, but I'm just speculating there. So the last part of this is really, really interesting. The writer of this article goes to pains to say that this furry thing is right. Let's have a look. So it's disappointing when students are distracted from their priorities by having to quash damaging rumors and misinformation circulating on social media. The rumor comes after a litter boxes in schools hoax spread across North America. West Monmouth School head teacher Emma Jordan said, "We sent a letter out in response to some completely unsubstantiated nonsense rumors." And then again, there's rumors in the community, and they are nonsense rumors, which we have ignored, and they have persisted because some parents feel the need to spread falsehoods. So they repeat the word rumor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times there in the last part of this article. And they're blaming the parents for spreading falsehoods that are circulating on social media. Okay. So it's the parents' fault for spreading unsubstantiated falsehoods and rumors on social media. That's why this letter's been sent out. So what part of this is false? Do furries not exist? Are litter boxes not being used in schools? Which is it? So I did a very quick search on furries, which I wanted to share here. I just typed the word furries into my browser and I didn't even get to the bottom of the page. But what we found out was that there's a furries in Manchester regular meeting in Manchester. There's a little furry fandom subculture focused on anthropomorphic animal characters. A large group at a furry convention in that picture there. There's YouTube videos. Why are furries misunderstood? My misunderstood life as a furry. I spent a day with furries. Wikipedia, furry fandom. 9 questions about furries you were too embarrassed to ask. That's vox.com. Furscience.com. What is a furry? A diverse community of fans, artists, writers, gamers, and role players. Furry sex. What is it? Right, it didn't take long to escalate there, did it? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6th hit that my search engine popped out takes us on to furry sex. Let's talk about furries safer schools. So the 7th hit is connecting furries with schools, right? So there's some connection there, at least according to oursaferschools.co.uk. They obviously feel they need to weigh in on this topic. And what are furries? Debunking myths about kids identifying as animals. It's not about sex, so it just goes on and on. So it is a thing. It is a thing, and it's happening, and it has at least some some context within schools. So this is part of the puzzle that I think plays into an article we're going to read later. But very strange times, very strange stuff going on in schools. And if you have children in schools, I would really encourage you to talk to them and find out what is going on in the schools. Because if you remember, if we go back, can I go back to this woman, Reed Woke, the media specialist? She is challenging social norms. Okay, so not identifying an animal is a social norm. She's giving a voice to the voiceless. Well, pets and can't speak. They can, do other sounds, but they don't use words like we do. A group that's disenfranchised. Okay, this sounds like a disenfranchised group. I can't imagine anybody like showering gifts and wealth and praise and grant money and job opportunities and all that stuff on a bunch of people who dress up as animals and role play all day, every day. Challenge the status quo. Well, the status quo certainly does consist of human beings not wanting to be treated like animals, and have a protagonist from underrepresented or oppressed group. So the underrepresented or oppressed group in this case is the furry people. So you can see how this ties together, right? You can see how the Reed Woke effort here is going to pave the way and lay the foundation for a young person to be like, do you know what? I'm going to be a furry. It just fits together like a hand in a glove. All right, what's next? So this brings us to this Spectator article, which is running the line, why are so many young people single, declining social skills, and increasing depression? This is from very recent as well, and published at 4:49 a.m. So I guess this fellow was up all night penning this. Good man. So increasing number of young Brits are single. A recent study shed light on the factors that contribute to involuntary singlehood in Britain and beyond. Two psychologists based in Cyprus. They're looking at things like sexual functioning, body weight, children from a previous relationship, these kind of things. The duo found that poorer sexual functioning was associated with the highest probability of becoming involuntarily single. This seems silly to me. If poor sexual functioning presumably means you're not having sex, and if you're not having sex, then you're probably single, right? There's a correlation there. Or if you're single and you're not having sex, then you're probably going to remain single, is what I'm saying. A number of factors contribute to sexual dysfunction, including depression and anxiety. Okay, so what's causing the depression and anxiety that's causing sexual dysfunction? Let's find out. In 2018, roughly 1/3 of 16 to 24-year-olds in the UK reported depression and anxiety. Then, the draconian lockdowns that accompanied the pandemic made these problems many times worse. Now, full disclosure, I've had my own experiences in the past with depression and anxiety, and I put a fairly immense amount of reading and learning into where these states of mind, feelings, and sensations come from. And there's all manner of reasons. But biology and the requirements of having a human, being a human, that's an extremely important factor. So things like nutrition, exercise, daylight, sleep schedule. If you don't have these things dialed in and working for you, and you're not taking care that these daily routines are met, then you're going to feel like crap all the time. And that was my quick 5-second takeaway and input on that topic. So back to the article. Draconian lockdowns made things worse, of course. And there's also research showing that the longer a person remains single, the more likely they are to become depressed. Absolutely. We are people, we're human beings that require love, intimacy, compassion. We need to be seen and heard and acknowledged. We want to be held and hugged when we feel sad. We want to laugh with people. We want to tickle and touch and have that physical contact. It's extremely important. If you do not hold a baby after it is born, it will die very quickly. This human touch is extremely important. And if you're not getting it, you're going to feel like shit. You're going to be miserable. It makes perfect sense. So not only are an increasing number of young people single, most of them are having sex much later in life. Many aren't having sex at all. Body dysmorphia appears to be contributing to the rise of sad, sexless singles. This feeds into the declining populations, which is a situation in many Western European countries. The native populations are. This is describing the young people of our native populations. They're struggling with the situation they've been born into, with what's been done to them through the schooling system, through poor nutrition, bad diet, bad food, fast food, seed oils, sedentary lifestyle, hypnotic screen content through smartphones, internet, streaming services, television, all this stuff. It all adds up. It all stacks up. And it leads people to not want to have sex or have children or be in a committed relationship, or even maybe they want that, but they just have no idea how to go about getting it. It's a real catastrophe, and it is a real existential threat to many Western countries at the minute. So this leads on, and this connects back to, if you're teaching your young children, if to go back to that, what that woman said, if we can go back, she said she wants to challenge the norms, challenge the social norm, right, with her books and the status quo. Well, if your status quo is get married, have children, then she's challenging that. She wants to get rid of that. She wants to, no, you can be a cat. Just be a cat. Join this other group of cat people who are single and sexless and meow at each other all day long. It's just insidious. I shouldn't laugh because it's a tragedy, but it is also like stupid, so I have to laugh at it. So Many are having sex much later in life. Many aren't having sex at all. Body dysmorphia. What's that? That's just kind of being totally uncomfortable in your own skin and your own body. Why might that be? Well, maybe you're fat, and maybe you are unhealthy, and maybe your hormones don't work properly, and maybe you are exposed to lots of chemicals in the home environment. Maybe you're not getting sunlight and exposure to soil and clean water. And maybe you're eating processed foods which are not organic, which are not naturally grown, which have all sorts of additives and chemicals and unpronounceable ingredients added to them. And this is going to lead you, this is a constant barrage and assault on your system, which is going to leave you hating your system. Instead of hating the behaviors and the aspects of the environment which trigger that response, you're just going to hate yourself. You're going to look in the mirror and say, what's the point? Look at that. I'd rather be a cat. Then this article goes on to tell us about the effect of technology, which is also a massively critical part of this. So the matter of technology is preventing people dating. Basically, people are, look at this. 1 in every 10 Brits has 0 friends. I meant to highlight that when I first went through. I'm not sure why that highlight didn't go, but one in 10 Brits. Oh yeah, and virtual as well. That is highlighted. So they've swapped out the real world for the virtual world. So instead of just going out and hang out with people in person, everything is mediated by these black mirrors and these devices, and now it's like, oh, add me on Instagram and give me a like and send me some text messages, and that is not human to human interaction. That's human to screen interaction, which is a very different thing. The human to screen interaction, people do that and they engage with that because it gives them a hit of good feel-good chemicals, right? Every time the notification goes off, bing, pop, all this little sounds, all this good stuff, it's like a reward. It's like pulling the crank on a casino machine, bing, and you go, woo, that feels good. So they get addicted to that sound, that response. It's a Pavlovian training response, right? So when you're trying to date other people through the medium of the internet and dating sites and messaging, they're not interested in you and who you are and you as a human. They're interested in getting more dopamine hits from their phone messages going off. So you think you're getting to know someone and they care about you, and all it is they're bored, their life might be crap, and they need to stimulate themselves through this kind of this mechanism that our smartphones provide. And right on cue, I just got a text message. I don't know if you heard that. So, but the thing I'm trying to say is that, like, it's not about two humans connecting anymore. It's about a human connecting with their device, and then another human connecting with their device, and the pings and the stimulatory responses. And then when you meet up, you're like, oh, this is no good, because people become desensitized to face-to-face interactions, and those interactions don't give them the necessary feel-good chemicals that they're used to getting from their technology, is my point. 1 in every 10 Brits has 0 friends. That is tragic. Roughly a decade ago, when smartphones entered the market, ominous trends started to emerge, including self-harm and suicide. Today, the average teen spends up to 6 hours per day doom scrolling their lives away. By the time they turn 23, it's quite possible that they will have spent 840 days, almost 2.5 years of their life, online. That's just absolutely... It's been done on purpose, right? I'm not even going to dress it up. These things have been given to us, and we've been addicted to them deliberately to bring about this exact effect, right? This is not accidental. There's no way it's accidental. And I showed on my previous video the 2 books, Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff and Surveillance Valley by Yasha Levine. Oh, and the other one that I showed was Google Archipelago by Michael Rechtenwald. Those 3 books, get them, read them, learn about the origins of this technology and what it's actually doing, what it's actually there for. Okay. And this is what it's there for. So yeah, it says, in short, they swapped FaceTime for FaceTime. Yeah. Studies clearly demonstrate that increased screen time is associated with lower social skills. With the rise of AI and more immersive technology, expect an increasing number of young people to remain single, sexless, and trapped within their self-imposed prisons. No, I do not expect this. That's why I'm making this broadcast, to talk about it, to raise just a conversation, get a conversation going. I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of questions. I do not want this to happen. And I think everybody out there should make an effort to talk about these things and get people to put their phones down. You know, maybe have a rule at your house. Come around for dinner, phones in a box at the front door. You know, I believe that there are pubs which require no phones, so that you can go in and just talk like people used to do, face to face. It's a real existential emergency, because if our young people can't make friends, can't form long-term lasting relationships in order to have children, that is literally, you know, the collapse of society and civilization as we know it. All right, what's next? From that cheery note, have we got anything cheerful? Let's have a look. I don't think we'll skip that one for now. I won't go into too much detail, but so we've talked about the schools and what's coming in at the young and the primary school and high school level. This is more at the university level, the battles that are going on. The University College Union having fights to enforce equality, diversity, and inclusion, which is EDI. And, you know, they're saying people who are making anti-Israel posts are disturbing, and, you know, they're trying to do them for falsely claiming that Israel is an apartheid state that is committing genocide. Of course, this is absolute nonsense. That is not the case. That is not happening. There's definitely never been any books written which to prove the opposite of that. You know, that's obviously true. And don't say that, it's bad. And please don't cancel me. And that's about, and this is what I wanted to highlight, is that anyone who questions these things gets labeled right wing, right? So if you would prefer young children to be taught about marriage and having children and creating strong families and being monogamous, then you're on a right wing culture crusade. And we all know what right wing leads to. It leads to Nazism, doesn't it? Yeah. So that's another article there you can have a look at. It just gives you a view of what's going on in the universities, and it's all incoherent nonsense, like most of what I've been talking about today. Yeah, I thought this was funny. It's worth remembering the same UCU has spent years leading a campaign against the academic freedom of staff and students who don't buy into its view of trans inclusion. Standing up for trans rights, according to the UCU, involves opposing single-sex spaces, pushing gender-neutral language as the norm, and opposing all debate on questions around sex and gender. So if you shut down debate, you shut down people's ability to think, to find the truth, to make any progress on the difficult questions which we all want to get resolved. Opposing single-sex spaces, again, it's very anti-woman. You know, there's a reason that we separate in the changing rooms before we go swimming, for example, the swimming pool. There's a reason we have separate bathrooms to go to, right? These people want to get rid of that, right? And you can just, it doesn't take a stellar imagination to figure out what the problem is with that. So the UCU is not really concerned about academic freedom at all. It just wants to defend the primacy of woke ideology in higher education. Free speech is a fundamental value on which academia depends. A hypocritical defense of free speech is as good as no defense at all. Absolutely right on the money. Jim Butcher is a lecturer at Canterbury Christ Church University. So it's a good window into what's going on there. So speaking of this previous article, academic freedom is under attack. We got a couple of articles here. The police are still witch hunting gender critical women. So gender critical women, what does that mean? What is a gender critical woman? Well, a woman who accurately describes what a woman is can now land you in trouble with the police. The police turned up at the doorstep of a 34-year-old gender critical lesbian. They asked her to attend a voluntary interview, saying if she refused to be questioned, they would have no choice but to arrest her. That sounds so voluntary, doesn't it? Thank you for all those options. The police station where she was taken to the police station, and she was warned that her post could be deemed malicious communications. Here's that modal verb, could. It could be deemed. Yeah, all right, maybe it could, but what is the likelihood of that? Is it less than 1%? Probably. Most people don't care. And the people who do care are idiots, and we shouldn't be listening to them and allowing them to police, to dictate what the police do to us, what we can and cannot say. And they need to be called out for it. So these are the potentially malicious communications. Excuse me. That she put up on Twitter. One of them said, "Just your daily reminder that trans women are men." It's kind of funny, but strictly speaking, true in terms of chromosomes. If you take chromosomes as the indicator of what a man or a woman is. Another described the transitioning of children as mutilating them. All right, so the transitioning of children involves plastic surgery and the removal of genitals and the application of hormone interfering chemicals which prevent puberty and permanently can turn children infertile. I'd say that's classed as mutilation. It can be done, with the parents' consent. It can be done voluntarily, but it's mutilating. And she was asked any lawful excuse why you made these tweets. Yeah, freedom of speech. I can say what I want, right? But she said no comment, which was probably a smarter move, actually. To add insult to injury, the woman, who was a big football fan, received an email on the 31st of October that her Newcastle United club membership was suspended. So this is this is where we're going, right? You have the wrong opinion. The police come knocking on your door, and then organizations which are signed on to all this woke nonsense will kick you out. I mean, what has her membership in the Newcastle United club membership got to do with the things she posts on Twitter? Thankfully, the investigation has now seemingly been dropped. So yeah, what they're saying is, because stating a biological fact might, there's that modal verb again, cause offense to someone, you might be better off keeping your mouth shut. Got it? Under the Communications Act 2003, it is illegal to express grossly offensive views online, but grossly offensive, like slightly offensive, mildly offensive. What's the scale? How do you measure it? You don't. It's subjective, right? So if I say this is grossly offensive, and I ring the police, say, somebody's offended me on Facebook, and they're going to go around and knock like they haven't got anything better to do, right? So it's subjective. It's impossible to enforce. It's impossible to clearly define what is and isn't falling under that category, which means it can be weaponized, which is what it's designed to do. Shut people up, stop saying those things, control what you say, and control what you think, right? Kelly J. Keane earlier this year was threatened with arrest for describing women as adult human females, which is literally the dictionary definition of women. So you can't use dictionary definitions anymore. And last year, the Sussex police warned social media users that referring to a trans-identifying male paedophile as a man could result in hate crime charges. So we have to protect the trans-identifying male paedophile's precious feelings. We live in truly absurd times. Right on. So you can read that further if you're interested. But yeah, I think that I just wanted to highlight that. We live in truly absurd times. What's next? Disciplinary ordeal continues for nurse who backed J.K. Rowling. Canadian nurse Amy Ham first learned she was under investigation 3 years ago for making discriminatory and derogatory statements regarding transgender people. She did this while she was off duty, and the resulting disciplinary process consumed years of the nurse's life. Ham's nursing license and livelihood hang in the balance. What did she do? In the summer of 2020, Ham helped co-sponsor an I Love J.K. Rowling billboard in Vancouver. She also tweeted and wrote publicly about her concerns around the loss of women-only services and spaces in her free time. Okay, so here's the women services and the women-only spaces now. If you remember in the previous article, they were talking about how they want to get rid of women-only spaces. This university and college union, they are working they oppose single-sex spaces. So that is the correct thing. And this woman over here, she is the wrong. This is the wrong thing. If you want to get changed around only other women or only other men, the same chromosome configuration as you are wrong. and this is the wrong thing. And so these are the issues that she's having a life ruined over. Things I've testified under oath. Women don't have penises. Lesbians don't have penises. Males cannot be lesbians. Males calling themselves lesbians are heterosexual men. Homosexuality is same-sex attraction. You cannot literally change your sex. Your sex is not assigned at birth. It seems pretty solid to me. But the problem is that this is a topic that is politically charged. Now, what has this got to do with politics? Nothing. So why is it politically charged? Because it's a weapon used to shut people up and divide people, and cause arguments and friction, and prevent people from being able to have a debate and settle an issue and come to agreement, right? That is what the whole thing is about. It's divide and conquer. Ham knows, and she's a nurse, remember, Ham knows that sex is observed, not assigned at birth. You don't assign sex to a baby. You look at the baby and you go, oh, it's a boy or a girl. Nurse tells BC Hearing she's not transphobic, but calls gender identity metaphysical nonsense. So that was a headline about her case. Metaphysical nonsense. I mean, if you want to get into the realm of metaphysics, I recommend you go and listen to Jay Dyer or someone who's trained in metaphysics. It's a really interesting area to learn about. It's been pretty much extinguished and thrown out of mainstream thinking and mainstream academia, but there's immense wealth of literature written in the past on metaphysics and arguing and discussing and exploring this topic. And actually, it is really essential to having a coherent worldview that makes sense and is free of contradictions. So that is a little more high-level stuff, but worth it exploring and learning about. I learned what I know from Jay Dyer, and so I would recommend go listen to him if you're interested in metaphysical knowledge. But she's right. It is metaphysical nonsense. And lastly, it says that this thing's going to continue till at least February 2024. So she's having a life ruined because she is telling the truth. That's what happens. So is she telling the truth, or is she just creating much ado about nothing? Well, let's look at this. Female powerlifter facing 2-year ban for criticizing trans-identified males in women's sports. A female competitive powerlifter for Team Canada who spoke out after a trans-identified male athlete set a women's national record at a championship in Manitoba has been informed that she's facing a 2-year suspension from her sport as a result. I didn't highlight much else in this article. You can go into it and read the detail if you like. I just wanted to get it on the record that, yes, women are being like elbowed out by men in a really insidious, creepy, illogical, stupid way that we're being kind of browbeaten into going along with. The threat being, if you don't go along with it, you're not a good person. Another example, Canada female boxer withdraws from competition after being matched against a male fighter. Couple of points in this one I wanted to highlight. A female boxer withdrew from a provincial championship in Quebec after learning that her opponent was biologically male, leading to him winning the competition by default. She was matched against a transgender fighter with no notice. She says, "My coach suddenly took me aside and told me he received information by text message, which he then validated that my opponent was not a woman at birth. We did not have any other additional information." So her opponent, Walmsley, would have boxed as a man in Australia. In Quebec, on his file, it is mentioned that he had 0 fights as a woman. So he's been boxing his whole career as a man. Then he decides, I'm going to be a woman. As soon as you say that, other people then have to go along with that fantasy. and then he gets paired with a female, and he goes on to basically punching women. Right? What kind of person wants to punch women? What kind of man wants to punch women? Right? If you're a man and you're into fighting, you want to square off against other men and test your power and your skill and your expertise and your mindset, and in a physical contest, mano a mano. Cool, go ahead. A man who wants to go and beat on women, scum is what I say. But rather than turning to me, my coach, or the Quebec Olympic Boxing Federation for more information, she decided to turn directly to the media to out me. Oh, this is him. This is what he's saying. He's saying, she's outing me. This kind of behavior puts athletes at risk of being excluded or receiving personal attacks based on hearsay. This could eventually be used to delegitimize athletes in the women's category and justify arbitrary and invasive regulations. Well, no, they're not arbitrary, because as we read here, a male blow has 163% more impact than a woman's. So it's not arbitrary. Men are born stronger with thicker frames and higher bone density and a longer reach, and they just are physically advantaged against when it comes to fighting women, and you're a scumbag if you want to engage in mental gymnastics and stupid BS and tomfoolery in order to justify one, that you have a right to fight women and punch them in the face and do all this stuff to them. Two, that you're the victim when you're called out on it, right? So, as previously reported by Redux, women abandoned a Brazilian jiu-jitsu tournament in Georgia last month in protest of the participation of multiple trans-identified males. As a result, one of the men took home 4 gold medals in the women's category, and in one of the divisions, only males were on the winners' podium. So, and there's a breaking thing at the end here. In response to the exclusive report yesterday, the North American Grappling Association has issued a full policy revision. Trans-identified males will now have to compete in the men's category. So that is a little good news at the end there. Something we can take a bit of kind of comfort knowing that speaking about these things, drawing attention to them, highlighting them, it can seem scary. It can seem, I'm putting my neck out, but you're pushing the needle in the right direction. You're empowering other people to speak up and say what's on their minds and say what they feel. And it is only through discussion and respectful communication and a back and forth examination of ideas that we settle any of this stuff. That is the only way. Free speech, communication, analysis, and put your voice out there. Don't be afraid to be heard. What else we got? I think we're coming pretty much too close to the end now. Yes, we are. So this is the last article and for this broadcast, and I actually wanted to read it in full. If you look, I was going through this and highlighting some key quotes. I just basically highlighted the whole thing because it is spot on from start to finish and critically important and ties everything nicely and neatly together for this broadcast, I think. So I'm going to have to, use some creative terminology here because there's certain words we can't say on YouTube that's going to get things flagged and banned. And I'm already probably on the edge with this video because I read from mainstream publications and used the words that mainstream publications use, and that can get you banned and slap on the wrist, as we know. So in this situation, I'm going to be using the word injections, and instead of the word that begins with P that rhymes with scamdemic, I'm going to use the word lockdowns just to try and skirt some of that censorship, but we'll see if I get away with it. But look at this fella. What a heroic dude, standing there, shirt unbuttoned, hairs on his chest, proud, long hair, bit of a feminine hairdo, but that's cool, that's his right. Nice bit of stubble going on, out in nature, and a big blue container behind him. I don't know. I like the look of him. I want to hear what he has to say. What's going on? So this is the Daily Skeptic from the 16th of November, 2023. As the UK's only head teacher to question injecting and masking children, I was investigated by counter-terrorism agencies. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I was the only serving UK head teacher or school principal out of over 20,000 to have publicly questioned lockdowns, masking kids, and the COVID injection rollout to children. Many other head teachers privately agreed with my stance but told me they were too scared to speak out. A culture of censorship and self-censorship appears to have stifled open debate. I used to feel like I was the golden boy of primary school education after creating an unorthodox curriculum at West Rise Junior School in Eastbourne, East Sussex. Alongside the usual lessons, I provided an engaging rural curriculum that you would never expect in a state school. I leased 120 acres of marshland opposite my school, the site of a former Bronze Age settlement. The children learned how to build fires and how to whittle wood with knives to make arrows. They learned to safely shoot 4x10 shotguns and how to skin rabbits and pluck pigeons. They tended beehives, sheep, and even looked after our own herd of water buffalo. I won the admiration of my peers, and in 2015, the Times Educational Supplement Primary School of the Year Award. Dame Judith Hackett, chairman of the Health and Safety Exec, said more school head teachers should be following my example. This was because I was giving my pupils real, hands-on educational experiences. I enjoyed very positive relationships with my staff and my employer, but everything changed after I began to question the government's lockdown pandemic response and its impact on children. Concerned about the impact of lockdowns, masking kids, and the COVID injection rollout to children, I used my social media channels to express my lawful opinions. This was to inspire discussion and debate. Regarding the COVID vaccines, I said it. It's so hard to censor on the fly. Regarding the COVID injections for children, my opinion has always been that we shouldn't give kids a medical intervention unless there is a clear benefit and a proven safety record. Indeed, before 2020, it would have been considered extreme to have argued the opposite view. For context, I have always focused on the same key points when publicly expressing my opinion about the COVID injections for children. 1. Children are at extremely low risk of serious illness from COVID. 2. The COVID injections pose known risks and have no long-term safety data. Known risks and have no long-term safety data. 3. A child can still catch and spread COVID when injected against the virus. 4. In my personal opinion, the risks from the COVID injections outweigh any possible benefit. Despite the above amounting to lawful, free speech, as well as being factually accurate, it triggered some individuals enough to attack me for expressing this view. My employer commissioned 3 investigations into me for publicly sharing my opinion about the rollout to children. This is despite me expressing my lawful views in a moderate and calm manner and within my own time. The last investigation into me followed a whistleblowing complaint under PREVENT. PREVENT is part of the UK government's overall counter-terrorism strategy. I was also reported to the Department for Education's Counter-Extremism Division. This is because questioning government policy on COVID was regarded as a form of extremism by the complainants. I was cleared of all allegations of wrongdoing in relation to my right to lawful free speech following each of the independent investigations. I was also cleared by the Counter-Extremism Division. This is because I have a right to lawful free speech within the UK. Nonetheless, my employer said that I could be repeatedly investigated in the future if the same complaint was raised. This was clearly a deliberate attempt to silence disapproved views using the complaints procedure. I previously enjoyed a highly successful 20-year career as a head teacher. I was consistently praised by Ofsted and had extensive, very positive national media coverage for my educational ethos. Even though my education initiatives were potentially controversial, I never received a single complaint. Yet, questioning the government's pandemic response cast me as an extremist in the eyes of some individuals, ultimately ending my much-loved career. A Freedom of Information request which I made to the UK government's Department for Culture, Media and Sports revealed that my social media posts had been monitored by the Counter Disinformation Unit. This played a significant role in the attacks on my lawful free speech. Instead of monitoring actual terrorists, the UK's shadowy disinformation units, in liaison with the intelligence agencies and big tech, monitored people like me. My offence on one occasion was saying that children have wonderful immune systems. And as a head teacher, I have a legal duty to safeguard children against harm. At the same time, psychological nudge units were employed by the UK government to encourage the public to view anyone who questioned the government as an extremist. Members of the public, who had been evangelized by the now debunked safe and effective mantra, set about hunting down those who questioned government pandemic policy, often reporting them to their employers and unleashing what I have described as Britain's unofficial social credit system. In other words, seeking to punish them via the complaints process and cancel culture. This Chinese communist-style censorship and self-censorship by vast numbers of the population allowed ever more extreme policies to go unchallenged and unchecked. For example, the government announcing that a child would not require parental consent to get injected against COVID-19, or the government ignoring the advice of the JCVI and pushing ahead with the rollout for children. Didn't the 77th Brigade and the like have any real terrorists and extremists to go after? My experience has compelled me to take my employer to the employment tribunal. My claims include discrimination, harassment, preventing me from making a protected disclosure, and constructive dismissal. 5 days have now been allocated by a court for a hearing in November 2024. Lawful free speech is the foundation of a healthy democracy. We should encourage debate and lawful free speech on all matters, particularly when it comes to safeguarding children against harm. The COVID pandemic appears to have hindered open debate, and people now self-censor out of fear of reprisals. My court case is therefore one which I am fighting for everyone within the workplace, regardless of their background, belief, or views. Employers should not be emboldened to silence the lawful opinions of those they disagree with. I have brought my claim in the Employment Tribunal with the support of the Free Speech Union and leading civil liberties barrister Paul Diamond. Paul was the barrister in the famous British Airways cross case and other high-profile cases. This legal battle raises substantive issues of freedom of speech and of the state suppressing opposing views, something which we should all be concerned about and actively resisting. And he then talks about some links where you can find his, keep up to date with what he's going through and his effort, and maybe contribute and help him out. Just an incredible, powerful piece of writing. One last thing I wanted to get on the record for you. Lovely, fine people who are wonderful. He talked about the nudge unit and the 77th Brigade. Did you know that the UK government has employed teams of psychologists to nudge you, i.e. control and manipulate your behavior using psychological tactics and brainwashing and propaganda and all these other sorts of they're called nudges, but they impact the way you behave, right? That sounds crazy. Why would they do that? They just tell us the truth and they let us make our own decisions. Well, this book might be one you want to look at. It's called Inside the Nudge Unit. It is How Small Changes Can Make a Difference by David Halpern. Who's David Halpern? He's a doctor, a behavioral scientist, and head of Number 10's Behavioral Insights team, or the Nudge Unit. And he invites you inside the unconventional multi-million-pound saving initiative that makes big difference through influencing small, simple changes in our behavior. This was published before lockdowns began back in 2015. But what they're doing is they're analyzing human behavior, they're analyzing human psychology, and they're figuring out how to make people do things that they want people to do, right? So have a look. If you don't believe me, grab a copy of that. I found it in a secondhand shop. It was actually quite expensive, $7.99 for this one. But it's happening, and that's what they're doing. They're manipulating you psychologically, right? And that's what everything I've been talking about in this episode has really been. That's what connects it all. It's all psychological manipulation. It's all designed to evoke emotional responses, to make you second guess being forthright and confident about your opinions. It makes you shy to state things publicly for fear of being cancelled or being kicked out of your football club or losing your job. And meanwhile, we've got heroes like this guy I'll just put him back up on the screen there. We got heroes like this fella who is doing incredible work. Can you imagine going to school and being able to start fires and shoot bow and arrows and make knives and whittle wood? That is exactly what children should be learning to do. This guy is a hero, and I really think it links back to where this episode started, talking about what's going on in schools with the books and the kind of ideology and the kind of indoctrination that is happening in schools, all the way through the rewriting of old books that are classics and that are loved by previous generations. Again, widening that gap between young people and older people to dissolve and break down the ties between families, between generations, so that the children are programmed and handed off to be raised by the state, by teachers who are pushing a political agenda, by YouTubers and TikToks and algorithms and big tech corporations. Meanwhile, this guy who's trying to do everything right and who's winning awards and has never received a complaint, he's just lost his 20-year career because he spoke the truth, because he cares about children, and because he is speaking out and using his voice, which is what I would sincerely encourage everybody to start doing in your own little way, however you can, wherever you can. Start practicing speaking the truth, because it's critically important. I reckon that's it for this episode. An hour and a half. Woo, gosh. Okay, thank you for watching this, for hanging out. If you're here live, if you're watching on the replay later on, I'm grateful for your time. Your time is precious, right? You don't. I was thinking about this the other day. You don't. We say we pay attention, right? It's the wrong word. We pay bills, we pay fines, we pay the piper. We don't pay attention. We spend attention. Attention is your most valuable resource. It is the thing that you need to be aggressively defensive about protecting and using wisely, right? Spend your attention wisely. I'm honored if you choose to spend your attention on the stuff that I'm putting out there. But there are plenty of other people doing really fantastic work. So thank you. I will be doing this again next week. Last thing, if you want to help me out, if you want to, if you like what I'm doing, share it, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Also, have a look in the video box below this video. You'll find links to all the articles that I've talked about today, and you will also find links to affiliate products that I've used, that I benefited from, that I think are extremely powerful in helping you learn your way forward, to embrace the challenges that we face, and to have a positive impact in your own life, on the lives of the people you love, and the children that we really need to rally around and come together to fearlessly protect and love and look after, because they are the future, right? And if you're a sad and lonely person as well, and you're not comfortable with dating and you're single, push out of that comfort zone. Go talk to people. Like, the worst that's going to happen is someone's going to look at you and say no, or laugh at you, and then you get on with your life and move on from it. But push out your comfort zone. Go and talk to someone. Ask for that phone number. Don't do it. Don't send a message. Don't start texting people. This is stupid. Go into real life places with real life human beings. Strike up a conversation, and good luck. Report back if you do that. I would love to hear how you get on. All right, I'm going to stop wittering and rambling now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and